Gordy Rush to talk about what LSU may do against them. Gordy, how are you? Good afternoon.
Doing great, Charlie. Just beautiful skies out here before the 100% chance of rain forecast we have scheduled for Saturday. So I'm enjoying today.
And you get a poncho. The
Thank you.
official poncho. Skip brought the ponchos back. Remember when
Ooh,
they outlawed the umbrellas? They had to bring back the ponchos.
ooh.
Poncho sales.
Canterbury 950 for poncho.
they're bringing in ponchos by the box load, and just driving in here, the RVs are already out there, so it's had this feel all week, and there's a feeling of confidence. So let me ask you. There was a question yesterday we got in the chat. This was about Mike Denbrock and how he's calling the games and some of the things that they have put in. And the question was, why weren't they doing a lot of this stuff in September? My answer to it was they weren't ready to do a lot of this stuff in September. But I'm sure you can give a much better answer than that about how Denbrock has evolved and what it's done to help Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I don't think that they really knew what they had, and they didn't know how defenses would attack them. If you go back to the Florida State game, Brian Kelly said they hadn't shown much of a bear front, a five-man front with a double eagle front where you bring a lot of pressure and just get after people and play press coverage. I don't think they expected them to come play LSU that way, especially with the talent LSU has at wide receiver. So I think, they were a pistol kind of spread the throw it a little bit. They wanted to run the football. What they evolved into is more of this zone read quarterback designed zone read option run, right? With the zone read, and so when you see them on film, and I looked at the Ole Miss film last night, the problem now that defensive coordinators have had, they can't just come play double eagle and play press and get after you, or they haven't been able to, because if you swing and miss on the option, Daniels has obviously the ability to tuck it and run for a lot of room. And if you're playing press man coverage, that means there's two safeties on the hash at 12 or one safety on the hash at 12. And there's a lot of running space between the line of scrimmage and back where the safeties are. And so everyone, including Tennessee, the last, I'd say, really 4 weeks, they've backed up and they've played kind of straight up and tried to find a way to account for Jaden Daniels in the run game. I'll give you a great example. I can't tell you how many times on the zone read that Ole Miss had somebody accounted for Jaden Daniels, but not the running back. And it's that +1 factor of Daniels being in the designed running game and the RPOs and the things that he really does well that has changed in what defenses do. And I think they found some success with doing that and adding a quick, short passing game outside the thirds to these wide receivers and getting the ball to them in space.
Has it been simplified? A lot of times we hear that this once you break it down. I've heard you talk a thousand times about teams like, Mississippi State's probably a bad example this week because Bama blew them out, but they do 5 or 6 things and they do it really, really well. Are they simplified for
I think it is simplified. It's a little bit more, and they get the term we've used with Jaden Daniels I've used has been within a rhythm. And to me, that's going before the ball, the play clock gets to 20 seconds. It's going no huddle. It's getting him to really feel comfortable. If you recall the first couple football games and some of the reason why they start slowly, I mean, he's had happy feet, a little bit of anxiety, and they haven't gotten out to a great start yet. But I think he's more comfortable. They're finding out what he's comfortable with and simplifying enough. It's 1 or 2 reads. He's rarely being asked to go through the progression of number 3 and number 4, and it works. They're able to play quick and get him in a rhythm.
When you watched Alabama against Tennessee, and look, Ricks is going to play in this game, and he didn't really play in that one, and I know he makes a difference, but it has seemed like even against non-Tennessee teams, Tennessee's great this year, that this secondary has not done the job that Nick Saban's secondaries usually do, or am I dreaming this?
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think there are 2 areas that really jump out when you look at them. It's the secondary and then the offensive line. So let's stay with the secondary. We know how good Alabama is up front. And I think the question in this game, can they handle LSU's running attack without having to add that +1 and account for Jaden Daniels? They're very good, and this, to me, is the best defensive line that LSU's played. Maybe Florida State at this point would be second, or maybe Tennessee. So that leaves the back end, and they've struggled back there. So if they have to bring somebody else up, and you get man coverage, will that secondary hold up against the wide receivers? And LSU hasn't run a whole lot of deep routes, but they've gotten the ball out to the playmakers in space, and they've been able to get big third downs and catch the ball and run for yards after contact. And so I think that's the question on that side of the ball. Florida and Ole Miss, I thought, were fair on defense. Florida didn't have the dudes in the secondary, and Ole Miss was smallish when I saw them in person, and they both struggled with what LSU was doing. Alabama's going to have better people. Can they handle what LSU's running in terms of running? In other words, winning the battles straight up without having to supplement the defensive front seven to stop the run.
Okay, let's flip sides and what LSU is going to do with Bryce Young, and you can't. There's no great way to stop the guy. He's going to put up some numbers. He's a great player, but there have been some things that have given Alabama some problems. Some of it has been with the backup quarterback, granted, but there have been times where they have looked just half a step off. I don't know if it's because they don't have the receivers that they have had in previous years, or it's been Young being in and out of the lineup a little bit in the middle of the season or what, but they do look a little bit less than what they usually do, maybe.
I agree with you, 100% with that. And I mean, look, it's also the product of what's become with college football now, with all this transfer portal action and trying to keep continuity within the program. And one big plus is they have the same offensive coordinator and the same quarterback, and that's obviously to their advantage. But when you look at them on film, they're not top wide receiving core in the country like they usually are or in competition for that conversation. And the big stat that I circled that kind of was a head scratcher was that they had 29 yards net rushing against Mississippi State. And you're used to this Alabama offensive line just coming out in numbers, and usually they have 2 or 3 guys drafted into the NFL each year, and it may wind up being that, but they haven't been elite on the offensive line. So this offense is they scored a lot of points, but it's because of Young's athletic ability, his ability to improvise, to improvise and make things happen. And then the running backs, it's not the Josh Jacobs or the Derrick Henry, but Gibbs and company, they are explosive, and they can take it to the house at any time. So it's a different-looking makeup of the Alabama that we're used to seeing. And it's not – I don't think this is it's not near any of the top 10 teams that Saban's had, but they're still very good with what they do because they have some people that are home run hitters.
Yeah, and one of those guys is Gibbs, and when you look at the amount of – receptions that he has. That was the one thing that stood out to me. He's their leading receiver as far as number of receptions, and he's right there at the yardage totals with the rest of them as well. So when you talk about Gibbs as a receiver, he presents a lot of problems to you. It hasn't been something that's killed LSU this year, running backs catching the football, but they do some different things with him.
No, they do a lot of different things with him, and he's the one that catches your eye when you see him on TV. And then he takes a draw play or just a zone play, 78 yards or 81, whatever his longest was, and he takes it to the house. And when Brian Kelly talks about Monday on his press conference about eye discipline, getting our cleats to the ground, getting lined up, and communicating, I mean, to me, that's one of the big keys when LSU's on defense, Charlie, because you think about this defense overall. I think they played very well, and the statistics will prove in terms of scoring defense. It's just that there have been communication breakdowns, there have been busted coverage, there have been missed run fits, especially in secondary contain, working inside out. I mean, you can talk about Florida State. There were a couple of those. There were some runs against Tennessee. Ole Miss had one. And, of course, Richardson, the quarterback from Florida, was able to expose them. And that's what you worry about with Alabama, because they're more dangerous than anyone that's LSU played, and they're skilled people. That, and then, I think LSU's corners and the edge people, the corners have played well this year. I wonder if they're ready for this level, this is a step up in terms of talent, right? And we saw Tennessee receivers get behind them. We saw Mingo go for a big pass. It's the big plays against Alabama that concerns me, and how can LSU minimize those on defense?
LSU had an offsides on the kickoff against Ole Miss, and they missed a field goal, but that'll happen. Other than that, it was a pretty clean special teams game. So all the special teams problems are fixed, right?
They're getting better. You know, Charlie, and I got another one of you know how I hate all those the illustrations you hate, the illustrations I'm coming up with. So I want you to think about it like this one, just for you, Charlie. I told somebody last night I was going to say it. So the Brian Kelly getting this team together is like a Rubik's Cube, right? It was all out of sort color-wise. And then he's been getting the front side, like all red. That's the starters, okay? But you got to realize it has a domino effect, and what you do on the front affects the back. And so there's been a trickle-down effect to some of that with special teams, right? Like you normally think that Mason Taylor's your tight end. Well, he should know what to do on PAT. He doesn't execute on those two plays. You get 2 kicks blocked against Florida State, and eventually you go and fix it, right? So I think there's been a domino effect, and as they fix the front line, the offense and the defense, slowly but surely they've gotten the personnel right, I think, in putting the right people in there, and I think also some of the strategy. For instance, on the punt return and the kickoff returns, for now, LSU they're not elite back there in terms of they don't have a game breaker. So if that's it, fair catch the punt, fair catch the kickoff, take the ball on the 25, don't risk anything, and just take what you get. And if that's the strategy that you need right now, great, fix it in the off season. You and I talked about the kickoff against Florida, how the kickoff were line drive kicks, and it was just going to the 1 yard line. In this day and age, either kick it out of the end zone or kick a sky kick and force them to take it on the 25. Last thing you want to do is hit a line drive missile at somebody standing on the 1 and have that thing returned. Well, lo and behold, Charlie, they listened to Hanny Time, and they kicked the ball out of the end zone several times. So I think he's getting them fixed. The attention to detail is good out there. It's just had a domino effect that goes along with trying to get all the other seats, all the other butts, rather, in the right seats on the bus.
Pack an extra Parker and Godspeed. I'm hoping it. I haven't looked at the forecast this morning. I certainly saw it earlier in the week. Is there a chance that it rains earlier in the day and the rain's gone?
It is earlier. I mean, most of it is earlier from what I've seen, and there's some chance of some scattered thunderstorms. It's what I read this morning. Of course, that changes here in Louisiana, but that's what it said this morning.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we're dealing with a wet track or actual rain coming down during the game. It'll make it's a big difference. Gordy, we'll talk to you on Saturday for the pregame.
Thanks, Charlie.